Welcome to Making Space For, the podcast where we embark on a journey to simplify, organize, and prioritize our lives. I'm your host, Paige Rabin, and each episode will explore the art of intentional living, helping you make room for what truly matters. In a world filled with constant noise and distractions, it's easy to find ourselves surrounded by things that don't contribute to our happiness or well-being. Making Space For is your guide to decluttering not just your physical space, but also your mind and soul. We'll dive into practical tips on downsizing, right-sizing, and the transformative power of letting go. Whether you're starting a cluttered closet, pondering legacy planning, or seeking the elusive balance between work and self-care, this podcast is your sanctuary for inspiration and actionable insights. Join us as we feature experts, share personal stories, and explore the profound impact of intentional living. Together, we'll navigate the journey towards a simpler, more fulfilling life. One where you have more of what matters and less of what doesn't. So are you ready to make space for the life you've always wanted? Let's dive in. This is Making Space For. Well, before we dive into today's episode, a quick shout out to our flagship company, A Move Handled with Care. As Denver Metro's premier senior and specialty move management expert since 2007, we've mastered the art of downsizing, right-sizing, organizing, and every step in between. From packing and moving to unpacking and staging, our experienced staff represent all stages of life, offering a compassionate touch to what matters most to you. So, if you're looking to make a seamless transition while keeping what truly matters in focus, trust A Move Handled with Care. Visit us at amovehandledwithcare.com or on Facebook or LinkedIn to discover the difference. Let's continue making space for the life you deserve. Welcome to another episode of the Making Space For podcast, where we explore the ways we can create more room in our lives for what truly matters. I'm your host, Paige Rabin, and today we are jumping into the world of family memories and the importance of preserving them for future generations. In this episode, we are thrilled to have John Klosner, the founder of History Capture. Inspired by his own family stories, John turned his passion for videography into a mission-driven company. History Capture is all about preserving family stories through accessible and affordable services like photo scanning, digitization, and video interviews, ensuring that the wisdom and experiences of loved ones can be shared with distant relatives and future generations. John will share his journey and explain how his company helps families create lasting legacies. If you've ever wondered how to safeguard your family stories, this episode is for you. This is Making Space For, Digitizing Memories. Welcome back to another episode of Making Space For podcast. Thank you so much, John, for joining us today. Super excited to talk to you about all things digitizing photos and capturing memories. And so why don't we just start with a little bit about who you are? So just introduce yourself, tell us who you are and how you got into this industry.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll just jump right into it. And my grandparents over COVID, everyone was locked in and they were in independent living facilities and you had very limited visitation rights. And during that time, I had my marketing agency going. So I had all of my video equipment and everything else that I would need. And I thought, why don't I go in there and I interview them just like I interview clients for a commercial? And decided to go in there when we had the chance to see them. And I set up all the camera equipment, captured their stories. And then when I started sharing that with family and friends, they were just like, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen, to have that level of quality and care in a video. And that's what really jump-started this business.
Very cool. So how long have you been doing this?
On and off for the last 3 years now. And definitely since I've moved out to Denver, I've put full force effort into it. It's been really exciting.
Well, we've been talking about having someone like yourself because that's only one facet of what you do, but we've been talking about having someone like yourself who, a lot of our clients talk a lot about, the physical memory, like the physical photo and the physical this and that. And I think sometimes we forget to embrace technology and what that looks like and how you can help archive. And so I think, we've always been wanting to kind of talk about the process. And so yes, you did the videos, but you also do digitizing of like actual physical photos, correct?
Yeah. And that's where the business started growing, as people found, interest. They're like, okay, I told this great story. Can you turn it into a slideshow? Can you include some of these photos? And that's where the photo scanning side of things happened, is people just wanted these big, huge boxes and stacks of photo books digitized and just easily accessible so they could share them with family.
Yeah. Well, we have a rule when we talk about downsizing. We talk about like the 80-20 rule. And a lot of people think you're going to keep 80% of the photos and you're going to get rid of 20. And we're like, no. It's quite the opposite. And, our suggestions to them are to, get rid of duplicates, because back in the day we used to get duplicates of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So getting rid of duplicates, getting rid of photos that are of landscapes or not of people, right? So we tell people all the time, get rid of things that don't have people in them, because unless that specific landscape has a thing, so we have like some tips and tricks for people. Do you have, as you're going through photos, do you have some ways that you help people kind of comb through the good, the bad, and the ugly of physical photos?
Yeah. And landscapes is an important thing, because so many people, when they're on vacation over the years, they are driving down the road or, just walking on a trail somewhere, and they go, I'm going to take a photo of that mountain range. Right. And there's no one in it. There's nothing interesting in it. And in process of starting the photo scanning side of my business, I met with archivists around, Denver. So that's, Denver Public Library has a huge cataloging service, and they store tons of historical photos. They actually digitize and catalog almost every historical photo for local businesses, things like that. All these old storefront photos you find, black and white photos, they are given to the Denver Public Library normally.
Oh, wow.
And they have very strict requirements on what they'll take, because they don't want to end up with tens of thousands of landscape photos.
Sure.
And they said they need people in them. They need buildings in them. It needs to be something of cultural significance. And I think it's a great rule to apply to your own photos. Is there people in it? Is this thing interesting,
Yeah.
And it has to share something. Some of the most boring photos that I've seen, it has some barn of cultural significance out in the mountains that no longer exists, or it's a mining town that no longer exists. So the buildings or structures are providing cultural significance if the people aren't.
Right. Well, that kind of also, when you say that, I didn't consider that, but now that you're saying it, we have people all the time who ask us about, pictures that may not be important to the family, but may be important to history. So is that something that you help connect them with the right people to donate that, or?
Unfortunately, a lot of these agencies and whatnot have very strict requirements on what has cultural significance. So that becomes a little more difficult. But I think for internal, for family matters, there's a lot of things that have significance to the family. Kind of breaking my own rules. There's lots of random photos of living rooms of people they get that, Kodak Brownie camera, and they're going to just test it out by just shooting a photo of a chair in their living room.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, though, when you look back at that photo was taken in 1959 of their great-grandparents' first house when they're moving in, Mm-hmm. And so that sort of photo, it stores so much detail and information about the life that your family lived, and you don't even realize the amount of stuff that's caught in there. Like, we were looking through a photo of my own, family's collection, and just perfect 60s look in the interior. And on the shelf, there was a little ceramic figurine, and we're just like, oh my gosh, that's that stupid ceramic cat on our grandmother's shelf that she loved so much that everyone hates. And it was just so funny to see it in its kind of original habitat. And so
we say that all the time. It's natural habitat. So imagine I'm a person coming to you, somebody has either passed away, or maybe I'm just going through it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will admit, all my wedding photos, I didn't get married that long ago, 16 years ago. And I don't have them digital. And so I want to go through the process. What does it look like kind of start to finish with photos, just photos?
I tell people it's a lot more fun to organize physically than digitally. Trust me, you want to sit there and just shuffle things around by hand. You don't want to be staring at a computer screen, dragging and dropping and renaming. So first things first, sit down. You find a nice big workspace, well lit, big clean table. Another important thing is you don't have to wear gloves. Everyone feels like these older photographs, they have to wear, protective gloves or something, and that actually causes problems for handling photos.
Oh, okay.
The best way to handle photos is clean, dry hands, because most people aren't used to wearing gloves. And so if you get something on your fingers like dirt or grime, you won't be able to feel it.
Yeah.
So clean, dry hands, big, well-lit work surface, and you just start laying out your photos, and you figure out a rough grouping of how you want to do it. Maybe it's his family and her family, or you're splitting it down family trees, however you want to do it. Put them in those big groups, and then you can start grouping by either years, decades, or sometimes major events, depending on how many photos you have of a certain area.
Okay. And so then they give them to you in that order or that project as they like it, and then you scan them and upload them onto what? Like, where does it look like?
So everything gets scanned in, and whatever stack you give me, normally I have you write a loose label for what you would want that folder to be called on the computer, and then I scan all those in, and they're going to end up on a cloud file sharing service. It doesn't really matter which. Right now, everything that I do, you'd end up with a link, and you'd have 30 days to click the link, and anybody that you send the link to can download those files. Cool. So there's no real restriction. I'm not here to nickel and dime people on, you got 2 downloads left before you have to pay an extra $12. It's the photos are going to be up there. They're all scanned. Share them with anyone. And the most important thing is that you keep them safe. A lot of people don't understand proper data management. They're going to click on that link, and they're going to download it to their computer, and they're going to go, it's on my computer. Yeah. And that's not how technology works.
No, unfortunately. I just had my computer break a couple weeks ago, and it's like, oh, gosh, do you have an external hard drive? Are you updating it? Are you uploading it? Is the cloud know what it's supposed to cloud? So what's your recommendation beyond just putting it on your computer?
So it's rules of 3. You want 3 different kinds of media. So that would be a hard drive, a flash drive, and maybe you burn them to a CD. And then you want to store them in 3 locations.
Okay.
3 separate locations. And you want to check them at least 3 times a year just to make sure it's still there. It runs, plug in the hard drive, whatever you want to do. People tend to lean towards those small portable hard drives. And unfortunately, those have the highest risk of failure. And what causes failure in them? Transferring large amounts of data. So when you sit down and because most people use them for backups, and what are you doing? You're going to back up 500 gigs of something to it, and that's when the hard drive fails, is during that process. So it's really important that you find either an SSD, something that doesn't have a spinning disk in it. So if you have, if it's that smaller size like that normally has like a laptop hard drive in it, which has higher failure rates than a desktop hard drive. So you'd be better off putting them onto a desktop computer just because the hard drive is a little more reliable, having it on a cloud service, and having it on a flash drive. And speaking of the downsizing side of things, 22 photo books from my family. I mean, the stack is about that tall from the ground up. 22 photo books condensed down, and it was 28 gigs worth of scanned photos.
Wow.
So that can go on a $12 flash drive.
So do you recommend that people then, at that point, it's saved, it's archived, you have it in 3 different locations, you've shared it now with friends and family. Do you get rid of the photo?
I think that's a personal preference thing. If you have it in large, bulky containers, all of those photo books that made a stack that tall, we took them out. They went into individual organizer cases, just these little clamshell cases to hold the photos that fit in a briefcase. And we have 3 little briefcases that make a pile about that big now.
Wow.
And that's something, I live in downtown Denver, and I've got a small apartment right now. Yeah. And that's something that even I wouldn't mind taking because it just kind of goes on a shelf. It's about the same size as a small, like carry-on cooler, that sort of size. And I think it's a lot easier for families to manage.
Have you noticed, I would think, it's very popular at funerals or weddings or any celebrations. I actually just did, my husband's 40th birthday several years ago. I made a slideshow. Do you notice that people are now utilizing the photos more, like once they have them digitized? Because otherwise they just live everywhere. And so are you noticing that people are using them more?
Yes, and especially because if they put the time in at the start by physically sorting them, then it's just much easier to find things in the future. And so if you already know that, hey, I remember that physical photo because we sifted through them a few months ago, you already know it exists in your head, and you just know, I just got to go pull out that flash drive, that hard drive, look it up on Google Drive, whatever you want to do, and you have easier access to it.
Perfect. And then I guess the other thing that I was just thinking about is when you have them in a photo book, you have to take them out of the photo book, or?
It's recommended to take them out. So you would be kind of destroying that work of having them in the books. But again, we're on a podcast talking about how to downsize and organize. So
exactly.
Keeping them in the books is probably not the best idea to start with.
Totally agree. And I will say too, there's also, I had this, when my kids were little, the big trend was to put everything in like those, like a Shutterfly book or something like that. So can you, I guess my other question is, so I have those digital, but they're very unorganized. Is that something you can help do? Like if somebody sent you like a digital library that you could categorize and put into different folders and things like that? Because that's the other problem is now we have like this running reel, if you will, of a library that's not organized.
Yeah.
My cell phone is just nothing but photos, but they're not organized. So is there something that you can do to help organize like that digital stuff that already exists?
On my end, not so much, because it's so personal to each family. You have to recognize people in the photos or years that it was taken of, important life events. So that's definitely something that is handled more at the family level. But what I can say is the scanner that I use, it records the front of the photo and the back of the photo.
Oh, interesting.
So if there's any handwritten notes, if you start putting names, that sort of thing, you'll be able to record all that information for the future. And I let people know that's a really important thing. If you're going to sit down and physically organize those photos, have someone who knows those faces, spend the time to fill it out and write them on there. Technology is only getting better and better. Right now you just get a scan of the back. We have the technology already to have OCR, which is optical character recognition. Same thing. Wow. When you fax something over, or you're just scanning in a PDF or a piece of paper, it creates that PDF with text that you can select. You can do it on your phone. You're scanning QR codes, that sort of thing. So there's plenty of technology right now that would be able to scan that text and actually turn it into something that a computer can read. Wow. So as long as you have it somewhere, you're writing it on the back of the photos. If you don't do it today, I can guarantee 2 years from now, there'll be enough AI technology to do it automatically. You won't have to worry about it, because that's what's important is when you start tagging that stuff. Just alone, if you use Google Photos, it has AI facial recognition. And so if you start training it on just a few facial features of people, you're selecting like out of 10 photos, you're like, that's my mom, that's my mom, that's my mom. It'll just start learning what your mom's face looks like. And it is absolutely terrifying, because I was training it for my photo. I've been backing up my photos to Google Drive since high school. And so it knows what my face looks like. So when I uploaded baby photos,
it knew.
It started tagging me. So, I had photos from high school, and I put middle school photos up there, and it just started tagging me in middle school. And then because it figured out what I looked like in middle school, it just kept going younger and younger and younger. And it can tell the difference between my baby photos and my sister's baby photos. It's absolutely terrifying, but
but also it probably makes your job a lot easier and things like that.
Yeah.
Wow. What are some of the challenges with old photos that you've noticed?
Most people don't take good care of them. They're stored in either a humid environment or someplace exposed to light or bugs or something. So the best thing that you can do is put them in some sort of sealed container. I forget who make like a Sterilite container, and they just have a foam ring around the top, and that's sort of their like waterproof seal. Keeping your folders in something like that, if you get the chance and you have the energy, interleaving, it's like a fine tissue paper rated for photos. The most important thing is people forget that whatever you're doing today is something that's going to sit against the photos for a decade or more, however long you keep these photos.
Right.
So yeah, sure, you can just grab a sheet of paper, but it's going to you have to start looking at things like, is it acid washed to make it white? Because a couple of years isn't going to matter. But when you pull that box out in 30 years from now, you'll be bleaching your photos. That's why, so many of these older photo books that I'm finding from the 50s and 60s, the adhesive that was used on them actually starts bleaching the photos from the backside. And it's on thick, like Polaroid paper.
Yeah.
And they'll get bleached from the backside. So it's important that you have some sort of acid-free paper, that you're keeping them in a dark place. You don't have to keep them humidity free. If it gets too dry, it'll actually start cracking some older photos. Yeah. I'm talking like, early 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah. We have that when we move, we can see art or pictures or photos that are just super sensitive and fragile like that as they've sat over time, usually in a frame that doesn't, there's no airtight seal and things like that. So we see that all the time when we move art and photos. Yeah.
And let me tell you, taking care of your photos, a little bit of preventative maintenance, the 3 hours you spent interleaving the right kind of paper so they don't stick together or something like that, if they're a thicker gel print, that will save you so much time and energy and money in the future. I'll tell you, I normally charge around 50 cents a photo to scan. And when someone comes in and they go, but what about this one that has a tear and whatnot? What do you charge to edit it? I'm like, it's probably going to be $45, $50 to get that back to original, quality and fix all the tears and wrinkles and spots that ripped off and whatnot.
You can do that.
Yeah. There's a lot of amazing technology now that allows you to make near perfect, fixes to photos.
Well, because I know that's probably a concern too when people think they're going to digitize their actual, photo, is they want the quality of the photo. But my guess is that technology probably even makes it a better quality. Probably makes it brighter, the color's more vibrant, things like that. Is that kind of what you've seen?
Exactly. And even on the scanner itself, you'll get an original scan of the photo, then it does an AI enhancement, and then it grabs the back as well. Wow. So it's just a quick pass. But when you're doing a couple hundred photos, that's normally all you need. You don't have to, if you want to, you can pick out a few for advanced, hand edited additions to it. But normally that little change alone, just an AI enhancement of color, is enough.
It sounds like, you haven't been doing this all too long, but I would venture to say that the technology has just made this even a bigger industry, and the way that we can use the photos and utilize them has probably grown as well.
Yeah. That's a huge change, because it went from being able to Photoshop hasn't changed much over the years, so you still are making the same changes, but with all of the AI enhancements to the tools and everything, you can just make changes faster. And I think that's what makes my business really interesting to people now is, 5-10 years ago, I would have said, yes, I can scan your photos. It would have been a lot more expensive per photo, and there would have been no way to edit them. You would have gotten the faded scan. Now it's so quick and easy to apply edits to everything and make changes to everything,
and it makes the quality of the photos better. So like your wedding photo from 1970 is probably going to look prettier today than it did in the original format. And so what a cool way to keep them almost refreshed. Kind of bringing that back into it. Do you do other things outside of photos? Like I'm trying to think of. Well, if I go into my own life, like my husband has photo albums of articles from being in the newspaper or things like that.
Basically, if it can fit in the scanner, it can be scanned.
Okay.
And it's so interesting to see all of the extra stuff that can come through. So many people do keep those newspaper clippings and whatnot, and to be able to, there's a protective carrier sheet for thinner papers or damaged photographs. And so to be able to stick all of that stuff together in the same carrier sheet, you kind of create a scrapbook on the go, and it comes through as one scan.
Very cool. And I was thinking too, family recipes that are written in their handwriting. That's something that I cherish very much. I have, recipes from different family members who have passed away, and I want the handwriting, and so it will preserve that as well. Yeah, very, very cool.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, right now is probably the best time to start because of the technology that's available. That makes a huge difference. The way photos are printed, they're putting dots of ink on paper, and so there's a theoretical, density of ink, and so most of those older photographs have reached that sort of max density. If you have a 4x6 printed photo, it'd be very difficult to fit more resolution onto that paper and to pull more resolution off of it. So the scanners right now match the theoretical max that you can pull off of the paper. My grandfather, probably 6 or 7 years ago, bought a scanner out of a Sky Mall magazine when they were still doing that and sat down and scanned everything at 2 megapixels. So they're just these horribly grainy little photos where if you put them on a phone nowadays, real life, you're only going to blow it up to, a little 2x3 wallet photo. And now we're at a 1-to-1 level for scanning.
Wow.
So you don't have to worry about future-proofing anything. Everything you scan today, at the very least, would just be AI enhanced for the future. But you're hitting the theoretical max.
Now you've taken it from physical paper to now a digital thing that if it does improve, you can do it in a digital facet. Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about, there's no need to redo it again in the future, because the technology is at its current peak right now, where you don't, if it's going to get better, it's not going to pull anything more out of that physical photo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you do is such emotional work. What's some of the, I guess maybe pros and cons of the process of digitizing?
I think it's only pros. It gives you the chance to store those family memories, collect all of this stuff. Most people don't realize that this might be the one time that the photos are all in one place. You know, my grandparents had, you know, these huge collections of photo albums. And then when my grandfather died and my grandmother went into assisted living, my dad has 4 sisters, and the 5 of them sat down and they took apart all of the photo albums, and they just said, I'm in that photo, so it's mine. And the next sister went, I'm in that photo, so it's mine. And so instead of having that that cataloged order, you know, all that time spent, you know, putting it in dated order and whatnot, they're now just randomly aligned, thrown in boxes at each of the sisters' houses spread across the country. And so there's no way to sort of piece those memories back together now. I only have access to the photos that my dad has.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people is, if they're all at your grandmother's or great-grandmother's house right now, do them now. Don't wait for something like that, you know?
Our number one thing we say is, when you have time, you have options. And I think sometimes it can be cathartic to do it also before there is an emergency. We say this all the time, no matter what the situation, is do it before there's an emergency. Do it before there's a death or an injury or illness that keeps them from doing it, because part of the fun or part of the emotional connection is the actual sorting of it.
Yeah.
I can imagine, you know, being charged in either direction, but, you know, it's spending the time to, if you don't remember the photo, is to ask the person about it. That kind of goes back to your, you know, the capturing of the videos that you do. So how do you prep? I mean, they're so cool. If you visit your website, which I'll definitely tag in this, but if you visit your website, you can see some examples, and I think they're just so beautifully done and really, truly an interview style of their life. So how do you walk through that process? How is that, you know, kind of prepped for families?
I tell them there's no set, you know, interview question. I have a list of 1,000 questions across 11 different topics, and I just say kind of, you know, follow your heart sort of thing. There's so many interesting stories that you can pull, and you're not going to squeeze the perfect interview in that 45-minute session that we're doing. But it's just so interesting to be able to grab whatever people are feeling that day, you know. And I've gotten such varied stories from, you know, the regular of, this is where I was born, this is what I grew up and did, this is what my family was like, to just really narrowing down on a specific experience. Like my grandfather on my mom's side, for example, almost the entire interview that I posted is just him talking about working in the restaurant that he had down in Florida, and then growing up in his parents' grocery store, and just his experience of working behind the counter, having to butchering cows when they come in, and, you know, the things that most people don't get to experience these days. There's no small family-owned grocery stores, and so that's such a unique story just from a historical point of view.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Very cool. And I think such a great way. And I could imagine it not just being for, you know, older adults. I could see it being for anyone, like a cool story or an event or a specific experience that you've gone through. What a way to capture that if you want to be able to put it on film so that you have it later. I mean, I can think of other things in my own personal life of really cool experiences that we've had, and what a way to, you know, capture it in that moment. And then, you know, now maybe you do it multiple times, and now you've got this really great interview towards the end, you know. Yeah,
I mean, there's so much of your life that could be captured and cataloged, and you know, just when you look back on it 30 years from now, you know, you being a part of this business right now, telling this story, you know, tomorrow, imagine watching that 30 years from now, what you're going to think.
All the time. I mean, when I even just give my bio to people and I start kind of rattling off all the things that I've done, it doesn't feel like that today, but when you actually say it out loud, you're like, wow, I mean, I've kind of been around the block, you know, a few times and changed things and watched it grow. And you're not wrong in that way, that it definitely, I mean, even when we look back at photos of when we were a staff of 4 to now we're a staff of 15, like just even those staff photos, like what a fun treat to kind of look at that growth. But like we were talking about it being emotional, what are some of the coolest experiences or things that you've been able to witness doing this kind of work?
I love working with veterans. It's just such an amazing story to capture and just hear everyone's varied experiences, because there's so many branches of service and so many jobs. I mean, everything from a man that he flew the B-29 bombers that carried the soldiers' bodies back during World War II.
Wow.
And that was his entire job. He never picked up a rifle. He was purely a pilot flying soldiers' bodies back from the European theater back to the States.
Wow.
That was his sole job. That's what he did during the war. And just what a amazing, unique job and an experience for him to share, because he was very few people were doing that. And it's just so amazing to capture such unique stories of service like that.
Yeah, veterans are my favorite. I just ran into a gentleman. We were on a little weekend trip, and I ran into a gentleman who wanted to just talk to me over coffee. We were getting coffee at the hotel, and he was a veteran and was telling us all about what he had done overseas and this and that. And I find that they love to share their story, but I also love to hear about it. It seems to attract me no matter where I go. But I absolutely love it. I mean, do you have people that when you're doing this that are resistant, that families really want it, but then maybe they're like, no, I don't want to be on camera, or my story is boring? Do you have that resistance?
Yes, very, very much so. A lot of people are very angry about it or don't understand. They're like, who's going to want to hear my story? Why would I talk about my childhood? I'm old now. And like, that's why we want to hear about that, people don't realize that, your grandmother right now, she would be the oldest person in your life. But you know what? At some point, she was 9 years old and had her own grandmother or great-grandmother. Mm-hmm. And for them to be able to tell that story, most people forget to talk about that stuff. When I'm sitting down doing an interview, they're talking about their lives. And for me to bring up and ask questions of, do you remember what your great-grandmother was like, is so wild to hear, because then you start getting into, just off of the timeline, just, wow, I remember, her talking about how hot it was in the back of the wagon. The back of the wagon where? Oh, when they moved out west to their plot of land. And you're like, what? Just people forget that history happened. And in order for stuff you read in books, people had to be there and live it. Yeah. And, my grandmother had this bed frame and dresser in their guest bedroom for years, and I'm just like, okay, it's just random old people furniture. I have no idea what it is. And when I got to interview her over COVID, that's what she had in her independent living room. Was she brought that furniture because it had such familial significance that I didn't know. It was handmade by her grandfather, and they brought it out on wagon out to where they lived out in Montana at the time when they got land out there. And that was it. They lived in a sod house out there because they were very poor, and they brought out this handmade bed and put it in the sod house, and that's where they lived.
Yeah. Well, we say all the time that, what we do is we get invited into sacred ground every day. We are blessed to be invited into the most intimate space. I would say you're also going into a very intimate space of history and stories and photographs and memories and things like that, and it never gets old. That somebody asked me the other day, like, what's the best part of your job? And I would say that's probably it, is it never gets old, because it's always something different. And when you think you've heard it all, you hear something else, and then you hear some more, and then you're like, well, I've heard it all. No, you never have. And I think that the other piece of that is several episodes ago, I had one of our clients on, and I never really understood her home until I read, she wrote a book, until I read the book. And I had to get the whole backstory. I had to get when she got married and having kids and, having a career and failed this and failed that and, all the different things and cancer and all of that. And then she starts talking about this house, and I'm like, I get the sacred space of that. Like you're saying, like the bed now, I get it, because that history goes way beyond the bed. It's not about the bed. Mm-hmm. It's about what it stands for, what it means. And being able to embrace that in a way. And I think, being able to capture this stuff, that it will not die, because photos they get thrown away. Somebody doesn't find significance in them. But I will say, even digitized, and I'm sure maybe you could speak to this a little bit more, but even digitized, if it doesn't get moved on, it dies. So how do we keep it moving? How do you keep, I don't just keep it on my cloud. How do I keep that moving?
Genealogy. That's the biggest thing that I'm dealing with right now. I had a lady come up to me at an event, and she was asking, I have all these photographs. Half of them, I no longer remember the people in them. What do I do with them? And I'm like, my advice is, if you have a limited budget and limited time to do this project, you'd have to exclude them, because if you don't know who they are, I can guarantee nobody else younger in your family knows who they are, and it's just loses cultural and familial significance. So the best thing you can do is make sure you're recording who all these people are and what the attachment is. Yeah. Why am I keeping this? So many people have, all this furniture in their house, and it's just grandma's dresser or grandma's this, and they forget or don't even know why she kept that and why they would want to keep that. And that's what I tell people is, find something and make it culturally significant to your family, and explain why it's significant, and that way it gets passed down.
Or like you're saying, right on the back. And I think that's the other thing too, is it doesn't have to be the whole set, because if you really remember, my sister kept a teacup for my grandma, and that was, I didn't keep that. It didn't mean anything to me, but it meant something to her. And she didn't keep the whole set. She kept the one, and now her and my niece do a tea every year, and she uses that teacup, and I'm like, very cool. But it's the same thing with photos and how you do it. Is like, if it means something to you, keep it. If it doesn't, let it go, because no one else is going to have that personal connection with it if you don't.
Yeah.
And if you're not teaching that or explaining who it is, or I can think of a lot of photos now just going through my head of like, I don't remember who those people are at all, and that could even just be from high school. I'd have to go back into phone a friend or go through the yearbook to figure out who the heck that is. That's a really good piece of advice, that if it doesn't mean something to you, if it doesn't create that connection, then let it go. Because if it doesn't mean it to you, then how is it going to keep moving?
Yeah. I know my dad got a plaque for his 18th birthday, and it just one of those sentimental gifts given to him by his mother. And it's so funny, because if I didn't know what my dad looked like as a kid, I wouldn't be able to recognize him in that photo. Yeah. And there's a photo on the back of him actually opening it on Christmas Day, that sort of thing. So attaching something with it, a letter of why the teacup is important, or the story behind it, and putting that in the box. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I have my sister did this great thing for my daughter, that every year on her birthday, she opens up a letter, and it's from somebody in our family, which is really fun when you open them and they've passed. When my grandma's when we opened hers and she was gone, and things like that. So, this just opens up that whole thing of do you put it in a drawer or in a manila envelope that's shoved in your office that nobody sees? Can you have it more organized? And I think the answer is yes, for sure.
I think you have to designate someone in your family to sort of be the family historian, the person with the most storage space, Or
the person who's the most nostalgic.
Yeah.
My sister.
But it's so easy. You just get some clear bins that can hold, hanging file folders, something that's got a semi-watertight lid to it, and, have these photos in hanging folders, have all those scanned letters, and, just to keep those, physical copies organized and whatnot. And it's so easy. You just have a folder, and you're going to call it 201. How I scan photos for clients is I do last name, and then I put a 3-digit number, and then that way any folders or envelopes that I have photos stuffed in, whatnot, I'm going to put that same 3-digit number on, so they know what it is or where it is or how to find that photo. And so they know they can go into, Klosner 301, and they find a photo on there digitally that they like, or an item that they want, and they just have to go find that folder that says 301, or that envelope that says 301.
Yeah, very cool. It's just the theme of our podcast is the making space for. And when I decided I wanted to do this, almost a year ago, the whole idea behind it was we wanted to be able to create space in people's lives for what does matter. And this is something that is such a bottleneck for people. And so what is your experience in this? Helps people create space for anything else, something else? What is your experience, kind of creating that space for other people?
I would say just helping them figure out what's important. And I didn't realize how much of a guidepost I would end up being. But just off of, the experience that I have, all the other interviews and all the clients that I've talked to, I'm starting to collect this Well, generally, this is what people are keeping. This is where they draw the line. This is why they're getting rid of photos if they don't recognize anybody in them. If they're landscape photos, it's just little tips and tricks sort of that I pick up over the years.
Yeah.
And what I tell people too is there's no competition. There's no, it's not even a marathon. It's just an ongoing journey uphill, because every day you're creating and collecting more and more photos and information. And you think about it, each decade it's getting exponentially larger and larger with the amount of photos you create and collect. And if you look at your iPhone right now, I can guarantee
you can take 4 of the same, 20 of the same event. And whereas before you'd take one, you'd get a duplicate, and then your sister would do it from another angle, and then that was the end of that. Because you had to pay for it. So now it's just like it's never ending. And I think to be honest with you, feel a little more overwhelmed with the digital stuff of how do I keep that organized. And so there's got to be some ways, I'm sure there are, to keep your digital stuff in categories and things like that, because mine's just a running scroll. I love the search feature because, like you're saying, it recognizes who you are, and if you started tagging people, it'll pull all the pictures of my daughter, it'll pull all the pictures of my son, and things like that. So those are cool features. But yeah, I could see like this, it feels monumental, but I think when you listen to the tips and tricks we just kind of talked about and really whittle it down, it's spending the time, and they can do it in chunks, right? Like they don't have to give you their whole life library in one setting. They can do, 100 photos, 20 photos.
Sit down and figure out 1970 to 1980. Get that organized over a Christmas or something with the family. When everyone's together, have all these mystery photos that you don't know what they are, and show it to an aunt or an uncle or something like that. And
that's fun. I love that, because that's what the whole point of those photos is to create connection and, like you said, that familiar part with your family. And so, make it an event. Don't make it something that you wait to the very end to do. And I think that's what a lot of people do. And I think a lot of our clients are going to just take it and then, it's going to be my daughter's problem. Well, that's a big thing to go through. And again, there's no one now to ask. So let's do it together. And I think that's great. Do you do one-on-one sorting with people, or is that something you expect them to do?
I don't do one-on-one sorting. I think it's just so difficult, and it's so personable that it's tough for me to provide any sort of input or assistance. It's very much up to each person who can recognize the photos. Yeah.
I would say that's something we would do, is if there really is somebody that would want us to, pull all the photo albums from every direction in their home, make categories for it, create a space to sort through it. I mean, we absolutely could do that. And would be honored to do that with families. And I think even just kind of give them the jumping off point, like getting rid of the landscape, and then the next family gathering they can go through at Thanksgiving, and they can go who is who, and do we get rid of that, and write on the back and things like that. I think what a great way to get them kind of set up for success.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
And I tell people all the time, there's no competition. I'm just explaining how I do things in my business, and I can guarantee you're going to be using plenty of other services in the future. Like me filming one interview for you is not the end all be all. That's not how it's supposed to run. They say, I can just pull out my iPhone and film something.
No.
Good. Well, good. Do it.
We were just talking about recording for my podcast, and you were like, oh, well, you could do it wide, and then you can.
Yeah.
Like, no. Like, there's a reason why yours looks professional.
Yeah. If you want quality, go for that.
Absolutely.
I tell people the most important thing is capturing the story. If you get the chance, it's nice to do a high quality video and do as many interviews as you can afford to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, capturing that story and having a video just on your iPhone is better than nothing, because a video is always more interesting to look at. Audio is always better than something that's written, and having something written is better than just staring at a photograph.
Yeah.
So it's
totally
important.
Agree. So and when you go to your website too, I also like it. You have it broken down into easy, digestible packages, which I appreciate. So that people can kind of understand what that would look like, how they set themselves up for success. Do you only do? I would assume I could send you my photos if I lived in Ohio or if I lived in Iowa, but I would assume your video probably has to be here in the Denver metro area.
I do travel.
Oh,
I have plenty of people that are like, my grandmother's in Ohio. Will you get on a plane?
Okay.
Yes, I will. It's totally fine. There's very few services that do this.
Yeah.
And the main hurdle that I wanted to cover for most people is if you go, oh, well, let me just go hire a videographer, they're doing commercial work. They're going to give you a day rate that's in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And that's, very unaffordable for most people. And that's why I tell people, I'm working on starting just sort of Zoom consultations for people that are out of state or not in the area of, this is how you can get the best lighting. This is how you can film with your iPhone. Give me a call. Let me see what the live view is. I'll tell you how you can move lights around and whatnot. I mean, there has been plenty of people, even my brother-in-law's grandparents, I help them move around desk lights, and like you have to you're grabbing a whole bunch of desk lamps and end table lights and taking the shades off of them, and you're just going to put them on that side of the room, put a white blanket on the other side as a light bounce, and it looked like a professional interview. You wouldn't know the difference. Yeah. And with today's phone technology, you really can't. It's 4K, it's high quality, and I tell people, just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Do it.
Totally.
Don't wait for me. Do it.
Yeah, and even don't wait till like we said, like older adults. Do it when you're young. When something cool happens, when you went on a cool experience, you went on a trip, you did a specific project, you accomplished something at work, whatever that is. Like just capture it at that time. No matter how young you think you are, I can guarantee you have some 12-year-old niece and nephews that are still calling you old. So it's well, and then the worst part is like then you're me, and I'm a very present person. I struggle with photos and videos at all. I always joke that I've got, girlfriends and family members that take pictures of my kids or they wouldn't exist. I'm a very just in the present moment, but I'm trying to get better at it. And, because sometimes, it's like the videos, and I love, I have an app on my phone that will bring them from different memories of the day. And yesterday was a video of my daughter when she's 2 and she's singing happy birthday. And it's just the cutest thing in the world. And I'm like, see, this is why you do these things. And so we just need to be better at it, of capturing that for your family. Really cool work what you do. Yeah. It's been super fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing about this, I think, super important thing. It's not just for older adults. It's for all people to get organized. It's going to get me the swift kick in the rear. I need to get my wedding. I need to get my wedding stuff organized. I need to get old photos that I know my mom has given me organized, and the books and books and books that my husband has of his basketball. Those need to be digitized. Yeah. And then I can let them go. I need to let him go. So we always joke that he's the hoarder. We're going to die in his journals and his like old memorabilia. And I'm like, if I can digitize it, then maybe we can say goodbye. So I appreciate so much what you do. And I hope your business continues to grow, because that means that people are downsizing all those things and capturing those memories. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Awesome. That wraps up another inspiring episode of the Making Space for podcast. A huge thank you to our incredible guest and to you, our cherished listeners. Your journey to intentional living begins with each small step, and we're honored to be a part of it. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please consider liking, subscribing, and rating our podcast on your favorite platform. Before we part ways, a friendly reminder: if you're embarking on a move or seeking expert guidance in downsizing, remember A Move Handled with Care in Denver. With over 15 years of experience in senior and specialty move management, we're here to transform your transition into a seamless, stress-free experience. Visit amovehandledwithcare.com for more information, and let's continue making space for the life you've always wanted. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep making space for what matters most.